The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it is hump day in the Riv after a council meeting. So we got a lot to talk about. So let Admiral COVID hit us up with the latest numbers if he has them. And we can get on with the show.
I always had the numbers. One way or the other, I get them if I got to step until midnight. The COVID numbers as of yesterday are 659,721, 188 new cases, 17,465 total deaths, 2 new deaths, and 68,477. And that is the count.
And did you get those from the city or did you have to go digging?
I went to the state for those, and I had no problem getting them.
Kind of like the information at the council meeting. You got to go digging sometime. You got to go looking at other places. Well, and with that, I guess yesterday's council meeting was very, very interesting. Controversy continues to swirl over the meetings and the way it was handled. And obviously, it was a tragedy. But I think a lot of things were revealed over this. The way the entire thing was handled, and about transparency, lack thereof, and whether people are being duplicitous or not. Because there was a little bit of back and forth. They have already tried to stay relatively, calm. But I think it was obvious where the councilors stood. The ones who were pro-administration were very quick to point out that it was a good meeting. It was this meeting. It was that meeting, and other people were concerned about the fact that the Public Safety Committee couldn't have a meeting. So I guess we're going to have to. That's the thing we're going to have to explore this morning because, frankly, the way this went down, or the way it's alleged to have gone down, is not good. The tragedy is the tragedy. We know that. There were tragedies happening in this country throughout the country. I mean, there were, I think, 50 people shot in Chicago this weekend, and nobody seems to really worry about when people get shot in the streets, but except unless it can be used for a political purpose. Well, what happened in Fall River was obviously something that's a tragedy. But I got to preface this, CJ, by pointing out something which to me is extremely important and maybe the best thing we can draw from this. This problem did not happen the day that people were shot in the streets.
True.
This problem started in around, and even before, 1996. That's when Eddie Lambert took office. You and I were sitting in this city watching a gang problem, a very bad gang problem, being ignored. And it's been ignored since 1996. And therein lies the problem. Eddie Lambert categorically denied we had a gang problem, and the Asian boys in one form or another were gangs back then. So that's 25 years we've been ignoring a problem and making promises to build rose gardens and in parking garages, and we're gonna have tourism, and we're gonna have this and that, while we categorically denied a gang problem. We didn't have a concentrated effort to eliminate gangs 25 years ago, and if we did that, maybe this would not have taken place. The reality is the Lambert administration and every other subsequent administration has ignored the gangs in this city. And even in this incident, the only person that highlighted gang problems was you when you read those stats. I didn't hear a lot about why this was happening and why it could happen again, retaliation and stuff. We're not hearing about motive. We're not hearing about, but we know there are gangs, and we know that kids are being recruited for gangs. And in Fall River, there's a lack of programming. But I think that's a really important point our viewers have to understand it. Listen, this didn't happen in a vacuum. This didn't just, it was just a bad day at Corky Row. It's been a bad day in Fall River since 1996 when they began to ignore the gang problem. And they went from having gangs with young kids to people who are in gangs that are in their 30s and 40s now.
Right.
It's become a career. Gangs now push drugs. They've evolved. And Fall River did not face that problem. And in my estimation, they are not facing that problem right now. So
no argument for me.
Yeah. We can talk about, I guess, the meeting. What was your spin on the meeting or your perception of the meeting?
Well, I think the first thing that you have to understand is the mayor called out or someone called out during that meeting at the beginning, how many people here are from this neighborhood or from the Corky Row? There are about 8 to 10 people who put their hands up. That's it. Now, one of the cameramen who was at the meeting turned around when leaving. People were asking what was going on inside the building. And the cameraman told the people what were going inside the building. But the attitude is, why are you asking what's going on inside the building? Why don't you get your butt inside there and find out? Be part of the solution. But again, the Corky Row is a very densely populated area. You know that, and I know that. My big problem with that entire meeting was it was a true dog and pony show. Alan Sylvia stepped up, and Alan Sylvia said, I used to walk the beat in Corky Row in 1975, and there's been a big difference now. What does that have to do with the cost of tea in China? I'm being honest. What does it have to do with the cost of tea in China? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. But again, you can't say anything about it. Then you had Mike Dion talking about how money will be made available, I guess, through the CDA funds. And somebody asked a question about how that this is going to be like one time and, how are we going to do this type of deal. And Mike Dion turned around and says, we'll find the funding. The police chief said, we'll find the funding. But there was no request from the city council or to the city council to transfer money to pay for overtime. The chief's somebody was complaining, I don't know if it was the chief or the mayor, that our police department may be overworked and maybe burnt out, and the overtime, they may not be able to work it because they're understaffed. They have a manning issue. They identified a lot of problems within their own infrastructure, but they didn't identify any solutions to these problems. The mayor's solution is to put a movie on in the park. He's going to put a movie on in the park. That's going to solve everything. The police chief admitted that the cameras around the park don't work. There's an infrastructure problem again. He said they'll be working in 3 weeks. 3 weeks is a little too late. So there's another infrastructure problem. We have a lot of infrastructure problems, but nobody seems to want to work on them until something like this happens, where somebody has to die. That shouldn't be the way we govern our city. That's not the way it works. But for some reason, people believe it works that way.
Well, that's as accurate as an assessment as I've heard. You're right. But the problem, see, herein lies the problem. They've identified all these issues. Why weren't they there complaining in front of the council about it before? Listen, The answer is always throw money. And right now we're throwing money. We had Shot Spotter. We got rid of it. We've had cameras. They never function. Maintenance isn't there. And I'm going to tell you something. All the shot spotters in the world and all the cameras in the world are not going to, they may document a crime, but they're not going to prevent it. Look at New York City. There's probably no place in the world that's got more cameras than New York City, except maybe a Las Vegas casino. The violence is running amok in New York City. Why? Lack of enforcement of the law. They're defunding the police. They're hamstringing the police. And there's an appropriate spike in crime everywhere in this country. But what disturbs me is, as you said, look, Alan Sylvia, with all due respect, you're a lot different today than you were in 1975, as we all are. And that's got nothing to do with it, as you said. It's got nothing to do, with the price of cabbage or anything else. The fact is that we have ignored an inherent gang problem since 1996, at least, probably before. And it was before. There were street gangs when I was running the streets of the Flint. We had the Webster Street gang, and we had gangs all over the city, but they were teenage gangs. They were like Rumble on the Dock gangs. That was a big thing in those days. That was the beginning of gangs, but it was basically teenagers. But then gangs became businesses and crime syndicates, and that's what they are today. And we've just stuck our head in the sand and the politicians continue to politic. I'll tell you what disturbed me. Number one, then we switch, and because it's over to the council meeting, when Councilor Peckham said that he told the mayor that they could have a joint meeting, and they did their meeting first. They had scheduled their meeting first, and he said the mayor said he was going to not attend the meeting and take everybody across the street. Now, if that wasn't one of the most, this is what Councilor Peckham said, and I did see some semi-evidence on a post. There was some posts on Facebook that was sent to me, captured, about the meeting and everything else. So it appears as though that it may be accurate. What was said between the two of them obviously is hearsay. It's not admissible in court. But what I'm
actually, it is, because Chris Peckham read the text messages yesterday in the city council meeting. He read them. He has them. So there is the evidence.
Yeah, but I don't think it was. He
proved that his meeting was set up by 10:30 the night of the incident. The night of the incident, they had set it up. They had confirmed it with the subcommittee that was going to meet. They were all set to go. The mayor didn't set up his meeting until a couple of days later. And they gave the mayor the benefit of the doubt, which I wouldn't have done. They gave the mayor the benefit of the doubt when they turned around and said, well, there was obviously some miscommunication errors because whoever it was at the Corky Row thought that it was the same meeting. And you and I know that that's absolute bull. Okay? Yeah. That's bull. The mayor's meeting and the city council meeting are definitely two different meetings. And the fact that Chris Peckham and the subcommittee were willing to have a joint meeting with the mayor to discuss these issues speaks volumes. But what speaks louder and actually screams is the fact that the mayor, being the pompous ass that he is, decided that he was more important and his meeting was going to take precedence. And that's the problem. It's all about the mayor. It's not about the people. It's not about the victims. It's not about the solutions. It's about the mayor. Why? Because it's an election year. And this is the problem we have. Okay, you can scream and rant and rave in your community meeting that we need the neighborhood people to call in and tell us when there's a problem. You need to call. You don't have to leave your name. You need to point out homes, buildings that are abandoned. You need to point out buildings where crime activity is taking place. You need to point out areas of the neighborhood which need some work. I mean, they had one woman at the meeting that was talking about people were using the St. Mary's School as a toilet. They were urinating and defecating on the stairs in front of her house. She goes, she would have to leave and go around the corner and come back and catch them. Okay, so she's reported it. Now what are you going to do about it? Oh, we're going to increase the cruiser. We're going to increase the police presence in this neighborhood. Okay, but for how long? We've seen this before. And then you're going to have people in the South End who turn around and say, well, we just had a shooting. Where's our increased presence? Well, you didn't have a death, so you're not so important. And then the Highlands are going to say, yeah, but our houses are being broken into. Nobody died. You're not important. And this is how we create a situation where neighborhoods are working against each other because they want the same protection that everyone else is getting.
Well,
we can't do it. We don't have the manning.
Well, I think the reason that this happens is we allow politicians to be politicians. And I'm getting back to where I was going there about those snapshots. What wasn't in one of those snapshots, I don't believe, because I saw most of them, was the comment that I'll walk out of the meeting and take everybody with me. That attitude is unacceptable. That's purely political. He wanted to be the center of attention. The fact is that meeting should not have been with all the department heads. Nobody gives two craps about their trash pickup. That meeting was supposed to be about getting the people in that area to feel a little bit more comfortable that this shooting and everything that goes along with that shooting was being addressed, which made the Public Safety Committee actions by Chris Peckham 100% on target. At 10:30 the night of the shooting, he set up a meeting. The mayor then turned it into Alan Sylvia and the Dog and Pony Show. They all had to make their little comments, none of which really talked about a solution. As far as the police department is concerned, well, they should have aired those things before. They didn't have any problem getting 2 new captains, which aren't on the street. So, they spend money where they really want to spend it, and then they say, well, we're on demand. Well, I think we got the same amount of cars on the street, sector cars, that we had 25 years ago. So obviously all the increases in spending on a police department have not gone to direct policing. And that's an issue that has to be examined. But the problem is, as I said, the comment made by the mayor that I'll take everybody out, that's a damning comment. That you're looking at this as a political stage. And I can, it's an allegation. That statement is hearsay, but I tend to believe it. Why? Because I've seen the mayor act the same way with me, with the PEC. He doesn't care. He went around and he wants to jeopardize our trust fund and the part that has to be put away by industry standards so he can give a couple of political holidays. As I said, in 40 years, nobody ever did it. But the key is what he did after the fact. I have got it on very good authority and from people who unfortunately are afraid to come forward. But they said that the mayor has gone to department heads and tried to use his position to influence them, to influence the representatives on a health care. He's appointing his own person to the IAC, and he's going to do everything around the back door to leverage his position, even though it's not in the best interest. But I understand he wants to go to the meeting so he can be there and look at all these people, because then he'll go and say, well, remember, you got to bargain with me. That's an unfair labor practice. The law prohibits him from interfering, coercing, or intimidating these people, and that's exactly what he does. I don't care about his "aw shucks" attitude. Yeah, this is me. I'm a great guy. I don't want to argue. Let's all be friends. Everybody wants to go to heaven, don't they? Well, that's absolute bullshit. Okay? That's what it is. He's behind the scenes. He's an old school politician. He's going to try to get it through the back door with intimidation and coercion. And you know something? I understand what those union guys are going through, union people, because I went through it. But the difference is, if somebody did that to me, I'd file an unfair labor practice. I'd go public with it. And apparently they're not. Because today, they don't fight for what they get. They politicize for what they get. They'll hold signs for a mayor. They'll hold they go up and they have this collaborative bargaining. And that's not what it's about. It's about attitude. And the mayor's attitude that was brought to this extremely devastating crime is the same as he does in a lot of other areas. And therein lies the problem. We're not going to solve this problem by having a political meeting for show. You were right. It was a dog and pony show. There was no need for every department head to be there. What we needed is that place full of Corky Row residents, the police, the Public Safety Committee, and the mayor to listen. And then to listen to what they think they need, and then to figure out something. Nobody expected immediate answers. But that meeting was, unfortunately, everybody wanted to throw bouquets. Oh, yeah, we were all trying. That meeting was nothing more than political drama. That's all it was. They were sitting there, flapping their gums. And as you said, there may be a shooting in the South End tomorrow. There may be a shooting in a Flint tomorrow. And the thing is that there have been shell casings littering the streets of Fall River now for how long? On our show, we've talked about it hundreds of times. Shell casings, shootings. But now we wait till somebody gets shot dead to address a program and address a problem that's been around since 1996. That, again, people and voters of this city, is what's wrong with this city. You allow these politicians, and now we've gone back in time to the old school Tammany Hall politics. You allow this stuff to happen. So that's the problem. And then and in the council meeting, it was obvious that everybody was trying to walk on eggs, and nobody wanted to be, you're trying to be an obstructionist. There's no obstructionism here. It was pretty simple. We had a double murder. Somebody from the Public Safety Committee, namely Chris Peckham, got a meeting that night called the Corky Row Club. Was that for political gain at 10:30 at night? Maybe it was out of concern. I think that Public Safety Committee is not going to politic. I mean, that's their job. And then to blame, which is a typical move of politicians, they blame the city council. Well, the city council doesn't have the jurisdiction. They are, as Sean Kadim said, the legislative body. The mayor proposes, they dispose. But they could have a meeting, and they did have a meeting scheduled. And a meeting that was scheduled on public safety, which this was about, was torpedoed by a political meeting. Because I don't care what you can say. Look, if you want to urinate on my head, at least extend me the courtesy of not trying to convince me it's raining. And if you're going to tell me that the mayor didn't schedule that meeting as soon as he found out about the other meeting, because he looked at it not as an opportunity to interact with the community, but he looked at it as someone stealing his political thunder in an election cycle.
That's exactly what it was. There was no question about that. That's exactly what it was. But what was very interesting, and I thought it was very interesting, was Linda Pereira was at the meeting with her husband. Natalie Mello from the Bank Street Armory, Mark Conrad was there from the neighborhoods. Different neighborhood association members were there. But Leo Pelletier said in the city council meeting yesterday, I didn't even know that meeting was going on. Somebody called me and told me after 10 o'clock, so after 6 o'clock, so I went down. But nobody told me it was going on. So that tells you that this mayor did not even want to work with the city council. He works with Linda because Linda's in his office all the time. She practically lives there. But he didn't want to work with the city council. It's your job to work with the city council. It's your job to work with the school committee. You're not the king. You don't control it all. And that's the problem. And obviously we can see on the school committee side that you didn't control it all because guess what? You abdicated your responsibility when you recused yourself. You advocated your responsibility. And you let the gang of four run the entire school department. That's a problem in and of itself. But this is what happens, okay? And when you look at what's going on, and I'm not saying that the Resiliency Preparatory School is a school for criminals or, you know, the bad boy school or anything along that line, but you had people involved in this shooting who were members of the Resiliency Preparatory School. You have to start looking at the common denominators. I'm not blaming the school. I'm not blaming the children of that school. A death is a death, no matter what, and it's tragic. But you have to look at some of the common denominators. Is the Resiliency Preparatory School, the school itself, a place where gangs recruit? Is that a possibility? Is it where criminals recruit? That's a possibility. What are you going to do about that, Mr. Mayor? Because guess what? You control the school department. So what are you going to do about it?
And look at where the emphasis was. Brad Kilby brought in the fact that, oh, well, we have personnel. We have a city administrator now, so maybe he can help communicate. That's not a city administrator's job.
That's right.
The mayor should be communicating with the council, and if this was really a priority. And then we look at you know, when we see attitudes like this, and it's all about the blame game, and it's not the blame game. This is about focusing on the problem, and we seem to have no focus. And let me just submit this quickly so you can wrap it up. A few people called me and said, I guess they're watching your show. They were talking about programs for youth. Well, I'm just going to spin this one since I know they're watching. I know you talked about basketball leagues and this and that and the other stuff, but let me tell you something. In my opinion, it's my opinion, but I've dealt with both. I've played on basketball teams and football teams and every kind of team. And I've also competed in one-on-one athletics. Team sports are not as effective as individual things. Boxing programs, violin programs that let the individual interact with other individuals. Team sports are technically gangs. Your team's your gang. You're loyal to your gang. Fall River was always notorious about having a fight after every softball game when Eddie and Tony Avila played softball and Goose Goslin. And I knew all those guys. They were notorious that every time they went somewhere to play a game, and they were very, very good players. But it brings them back into a kind of almost a gang mentality, but the gang is now translated into your team. Granted, you can teach them some discipline, but the reality is the things that they have to look at are teaching people computer skills, one-on-one and interpersonal skills, so people can talk to each other without getting into a fight.
That's true. Well, we're out of time. I had something to say that the mayor abdicated his responsibility again last night, but that's a whole nother story which will have to remain for another day. I want to thank you all for watching. Remember, stay safe, stay angry, wear a mask, and hold your politician accountable, because right now we really need to take control of our city. Thanks for watching.